Hi, everyone. I would like to remind you that in the old city of Jerusalem, there are four quarters. However, the Temple Mount does not belong to any of the quarters, not even Muslim quarter, but it is policed by the state of Israel. You can say a lot of uh, police and a lot of Israeli army, IDF, right through Israel Defense Force all over the old city and on the Temple Mount. However, the control of the activity of the Temple Mount and the preservation of the sites. It's done by WAQF, the organization that deals with the Muslim historic sites, and it's governed from Jordan. And as just to remind you that the entrance for non-Muslims to the Temple Mount is only through the Jewish quarter, and the entrance is next to the so-called Wailing Wall. As you know, I'm not a big fan of this term, but we spoke about it already, so it just sounds too derogatory, but basically the Western Wall. And the quickest way is clearly through the Dung Gate, which you have seen on the map. And I know you don't see the pointer, but you can see this wooden corridor, kind of walkway. That's exactly the entrance for non-Muslims to the Temple Mount. For non-Muslims, the entrance is limited, several hours in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. On certain days, you have to double check because it differs from time to time. Also depend on the season and if there are any Muslim festivities held. So just double check before you plan your trip. And it's always a good idea to hire a tour guide because it's Jerusalem, baby. Well, anyway, why the gate to the Temple Mount for non-Muslims? That gate is called Mughrabi Gate, Mughrabi or Moroccan Gate. That's because there used to be a Moroccan quarter from the 12th century only, so super new, and it fell in disrepair during the Jordanian occupation. And only in 1967, when the Israeli army managed to take Jerusalem, including the Jewish quarter and the old city from Jordan. They saw lots of destruction in the Jewish quarter and also saw the Moroccan quarter in a very bad state. And it was decided to eliminate the buildings from the Moroccan quarter and clear the territory for the Western Wall Plaza, well, the Praying Plaza, which is a big open air synagogue. But the Muslim quarter, it was intact. All the other quarters were intact. The Jewish quarter, however, was in a very bad state due to the destructions during the almost 20 years of the Jordanian control. And now I'm taking after passing the security gates, I'm now walking towards the Temple Mount. Well, you have to make sure that you're not wearing a short skirt or shorts, but and also nothing sleeveless or not really short sleeve shorts or dresses, nothing see-through. But even if you happen to wear these, they will provide a special, garments kind of, to cover yourself. So what is the Temple Mount? Temple Mount, Mount Moriah, is a natural mountain, right? Natural mount where it is, well, where the sacred things actually happened. First for Jews, right? Binding of Isaac, and we'll be talking about it when we go to the Dome of the Rock. And this is exactly where Solomon built the first temple, and well, as you know, the Solomon's temple was destroyed in 586 BCE, and that's what we call the period from 980 BCE to 586 BCE. We call it the first temple period, and then after the return from the Babylonian exile, some 50 years later, well, around year 500 something, well, the date is a little bit questioned, but nevertheless, the second temple was built, which was much smaller, a lot more modest, and quite, I would say, big for that. Zerubbabel and Joshua were quite criticized by the fellow members of the community, but the second temple was there until it would be rebuilt by Herod into something glorious, magnificent. And so Herod built it in the first century BCE. And what Herod did, so what you see here, we spoke about it in detail. So Herod had to extend the territory, the base of the Temple Mount, by somewhat 40%, incorporating everything that had been built before. And on top of it, he built a much bigger temple, and there were also other service buildings and much, much more. I'm using, as you know, the visual aids that all of my colleagues are using, be it printed or be it electronic, it doesn't really matter. So there are several websites that I always refer to, and my colleagues are basically using the same visual aids. You have to be really careful when choosing all sorts of guiding aids and resources because it's a complex topic, and you have to be by the way, you always have to keep up with the new discoveries as much as possible. So nevertheless, this is what Herod did, and I'm using this this shot from the drone to show you how well, I would say, the difference, and also how bigger the platform had become. The entrance, so the entrance is the only one. You can see it over there. You can clearly see the Mughrabi gate, and that's exactly how we enter, and that's what you can see. What you cannot see there, but it's underground. Obviously, there are gigantic stones. We saw those stones with you on the tours of the Western Wall tunnels. These are the foundation stones, and you can recognize them by their shape, rectangular, and some of the biggest stones are of the size of several, big buses. This is, and by the way the stones were cut, we can definitely say this is the Roman cut. This is clearly the Roman architecture. There are a lot of photographs taken on the Temple Mount, of the Temple Mount. And in this photo, for example, you can see the entrance to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The photo was taken in 1915. And also you can see the Dome of the Rock to the right. And as you can probably and notice, the dome is not gilded. Originally, the dome was not gilded, but now it is, thanks to Jordanian king. The entrance to the Al-Aqsa Mosque is also different. The architecture, the look, the facade of the Al-Aqsa Mosque is also different. It changed several times due to a lot of processes, and especially the destruction that took place several times due to the earthquakes. So this is also an old photo, colorized. I found it online. So I'm not sure I can refer to the source, but originally this is the photo taken clearly before end of the 1920s, because the facade looks different, and you will see the difference now as I show you. So that's my video. You can see it's early in the morning. There are not so many people on the Temple Mount now. Actually, it was 7 in the morning. And when I was in Israel in August and September this year, so the entrance for non-Muslims to the Temple Mount was starting from 7 a.m. So I was among the first, was among the first non-Muslims to have visited on that day. But for Muslims, the Temple Mount is open 24/7. And as a non-Muslim, I was not allowed to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And you can just peep through, but there are tons of photographs and footage. So, and up until 2000s, by the way, we could visit, not as non-Muslims, but not anymore. So why did the facade of the Al-Aqsa Mosque look different? Well, changed. Why was it changed? Because of the earthquake that took place in the end of the 1920s. And as a result of that earthquake, the roof was damaged, and in general, the skeleton of the building was damaged. The interior was, I would say, quite intact, so you can still find the same the same minbar. So this elevation, it looks I would say a bit like a pulpit, right, in Catholic churches, but well, it's called a minbar. And the I would say that the interior in general was not affected, but it was decided still to, well, first they had to fix the roof, but knowing how active seismologically this area is, it was decided also to fortify the pillars, the base of the church, well, the columns. Oh, sorry, not the church, the mosque. What am I saying? Oh, that was not good of me, but it was just a slip of the tongue. You see, the facade looks a little different, and this is exactly when the facade was a little bit changed, just a little bit. So, and basically, those renovations that took place in the 1930s, they are the only source that we can rely on in terms of archaeology of Al-Aqsa Mosque. The photographs, some of them I showed you last time, but again, I decided to start from the beginning because it's not so easy, to catch up and remember everything. Um, you see, roof was pretty badly damaged, but the vault, the columns were still standing. But I guess they did everything right in order to prevent any further destructions. And these photos you can find in open access. They are these are basically the photo reports of one of the most outstanding researchers of the Temple Mount, Robert William Hamilton, who was a British archaeologist and an academic. And his report, and he was basically just observing the renovations. They were not called restorations. They were not coordinated with even with the Israel Antiquities authorities, because there was no Israel at that time. The Israel had not been established, the modern state of Israel, I mean. So it was the mandate period, and the British, and because he was the British, it was the Muslims were, did not, maybe they did mind, but the British presence was there at the Temple Mount, and obviously Hamilton observed the works, and he published his report, and it was more than 300 pages. These photos are available online. They are in open access and anyone can watch it. So these British officers are standing on the floors of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The columns were protected with the wooden casing. So what they did in order to secure the columns and pillars, they had to take down the floors. And that's when a lot of absolutely astonishing discoveries were made. So they finished the repairs in 1941, 1942, as far as I'm not mistaken. And there are a lot of things that they discovered, like a layer upon the layer, and then there is another layer underneath. A lot of things. I will only cover just some details. First of all, even in these photos, you can see that the outline of the stone differs. That there were some other rooms, and there were different constructions at a very deep level, And I would like to remind that Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as the Dome of the Rock, were built in the very end of the 7th century, and Islam originated in the beginning of the 7th century, and it arrived to the Holy Land in 630s only. So that's why there must have been a lot that had happened on the territory of the Temple Mount after the destruction of the Second Temple in year 70 AD. And we will be talking about it, of course, even more. So, and we also know that building in Jerusalem and in the Holy Land, well, it was always challenging. And because, well, you come, you conquer, you build something on your own, and in order to secure what you have just conquered, you don't have much time. So they would normally use the stone that had already been there. And they would not bother to destroy like everything that had been built. They would just build on top of it. So that's why there is a lot to talk about. And just for your information, if you look at the Temple Mount from a distance, from the territory outside of Temple Mount, this is the corner of the western and the southern wall. And this is the territory of the Davidson Center. If you look to the left, you will see kind of the wall. So behind that wall is actually the Western Wall Plaza. As you may remember from the map, it's only just 30% maybe of the territory of the Western Wall that is provided, for the Jewish worship. And everyone, by the way, anyone can enter the Temple Mount, the Western Wall Plaza. The only thing you need to do is pass through security gate. They're not going to check whether you are Muslim, atheist, pagan, I don't know, Mormon. It doesn't matter. So as long as you behave and you don't bring any prohibited items with you, that's totally, unless you have a permission. So then it's not a problem. And there is a lot of archaeology that had been discovered all around the Temple Mount because the excavations were possible after the 1967 war, the result of which Jerusalem was liberated. And there's a lot of indication of construction that took place over the course of multiple centuries, including the times after the destruction of the temple, the second temple. There was a lot of Byzantine buildings. There are also a lot that was built on top of the Byzantine buildings, which means that it would be, again, you can't just completely erase the previous epoch, the previous architecture. You would build on top of it. So we can only assume, but I mean, we know that there is plenty of things you can find underneath the floors of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is the image we already know very well. This is the southern wall, and behind the wall, so there is the Temple Mount, but outside of the Temple Mount, there is also a lot of archaeology. The area is called Ophel, and there is the Jewish bathhouses, baths called mikvaot, right? Mikveh for plural, mikveh for singular, mikvaot for plural. We can see in the absolutely unbelievable quantities. There are dozens and dozens of them. And to the left, there were also discovered some Byzantine constructions, obviously the palaces from the Muslim periods as well. So there's a lot of things there, a lot of things. And just what I would like to remind you of that also there are a lot of gates. In the southern wall, there are actually the so-called Holder Gates complex, the triple gate and the double gate. This is important because they are the sealed gates, but they used to be open ones, and it is believed, and it was also described in Mishnah, which is the written collection of oral traditions and laws. Eventually, they were all put into writing in the 2nd century after the Jews were expelled from Jerusalem and the temple was destroyed and the city was destroyed. So we know that the Holder Gates complex, the triple and the double gate, were used for the pilgrims to enter Temple Mount and leave the Temple Mount. And this, what I'm showing you, this is the double gate. And Jesus himself, he was a Jew, so he would go through these gates and leave through these gates and would walk those steps. And a lot of steps date back to the Second Temple period, which is the period when Jesus also visited the temple several times. This is the triple gate. This is the entrance, and the double gate, this is the exit. And Hamilton discovered the underground passage, a subterranean passage that led towards the double gate. And it's just completely underground the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We have photographs. Most of them, I believe all of them are now in the Library of Congress. Well, I mean, yeah, it's written there. And if you look at the architecture of these subterranean passages, you will clearly see this is a Roman architecture. This is clearly the Herodian architecture. You can't really date the stones because they are non-organic, so you can't do carbon 14. And Hamilton, obviously, at that time, such method was not available anyway. But what else can it be if not Herodian temple? So there you go. And there are vaults and the whole world, like the underground world beneath the Temple Mount. This goes without saying. This is just the decoration of one of the walls in that passage, and above it is the floor of Al-Aqsa Mosque. That's quite breathtaking. Quite that breathtaking. But that's not all. There's a lot more. Well, for example, there was found a lot of mosaic, which is kind of clear. The mosaics are found all around the territory of Israel, dating back to various periods, mostly, well, Roman and Byzantine, obviously. And there was found also mosaic on one of the levels, not not a very deep one. And well, there was nothing unusual about with the Muslims also using mosaics. We know that in Muslim architecture, mosaics are also quite they were present, and they adopted this technique from Byzantine period, from the Byzantine culture. So there's nothing unusual about it. However, there was found an interesting mosaic, and it was noted by an, I would say, well, a well-known archaeologist from Israel, Tahid Vira. He is criticized for this. Well, okay, everything has to be criticized. Everything had to be treated with a pinch of salt. And I guess if you are objective enough, and if you question everything, if you turn your critical thinking mode on, I think this is always the best way to research everything that you face, everything that you encounter, to be able to provide the most objective, um, I would say, conclusions. So what they found, um, an interesting floor mosaic. I mean, again, it's nothing unusual, and you can find such mosaics in several Christian sites. For example, in the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem. So this is the church where Jesus is believed to have been born. The church is built on the top of that place. So in Al-Aqsa Mosque was found a very similar mosaic. Again, okay, it is quite similar. I mean, it is. And there's nothing unusual about it. So we know that Muslims did that a lot. It's okay. There are beautiful mosaics in Muslim sites, but the thing is that this is the mosaic that stretched outside of the size and the outline of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which means it had been there before. And Takit Vira made a logical assumption, I would say, which was very logical, claiming that there must have been, or that okay, there could have been a Byzantine period church on the territory of the Temple Mount, which again makes sense. However, we don't have clear-cut um, um, evidence of that because we're not allowed to dig on the Temple Mount. We know of a lot of things, right? But we know it. We know about it from literature, but not archaeology. However, when as you enter the Temple Mount, so the entrance, the Maghrabi gate is now to the right, and the Dome of the Rock is behind us, and Al-Aqsa Mosque you can already see. and you see all these archaeological gardens. These are the columns, the bases of the columns, the capitale of the columns, and well, different elements that have been found on the territory of the Temple Mount over the course of a couple of centuries. So, and some of those, most of those uh, columns, they look like Roman, but some of them, I would say, more reminiscent of Crusader period architecture and Byzantine period architecture. But again, no archaeology that we can address to. What else was found? Again, this is from the Hamilton's report. All the entire report was digitized and it's available. So you can do further reading, you can look up. There's a lot of information online. What I'm saying is like, I mean, it's like an open book. So they were found, steps of different kind, and sometimes those steps would have a division, like here, for example, right? And well, the walls would date to different periods, and so some of these steps look very similar to mikvaot, right? So to mikvahs, to the Jewish purification baths, and the Jewish purification baths have had to have two sets of steps for well that you take first for purification, so you are still unclean, and those who have already immersed themselves, they had to take different steps in order not to get contaminated, right, by the impure ones yet. And this does, well, okay, this does look like it. Again, there were no there was no digging there, so not so much information. It is what it is. We have the photographs, which I think is already quite interesting. Now, well, knowing that behind the wall of the Temple Mount there are tons of mikvaot, right? So, well, it looks, yeah, quite logical. Now, again, my tour is not about uh, you know, proving anything, proving my point. I'm just providing you the archaeology and some logical assumptions, since we are not allowed to do any digging and the actual research. That's basically it. Now, again, it's from the Hamilton's report. You see the wooden bulks. So because the roof was taken down and because they had to also uh, secure the columns, they they had to take these wooden beams, and many of them, most of them, well, um, I'm not sure how many exist, but let's say most of these wooden beams had already been, I would say, in not the pristine condition, and they had to be removed and substituted with the better wood. And these, well, by the way, this is already from the Israel Antiquities Authority archives. It's no longer the Library of Congress. Well, these wooden beams were quite interesting. So much later, there was carried out a carbon 14 analysis and several other dendrological analysis that, well, provide a very, I would say, clear cut uh, and accurate dating of different exhibits. And there was made an interesting discovery that most of those wooden beams dated to the well, first century BCE, which is the time when the second temple was built, right? Rebuilt by Herod, the time when Jesus visited the Temple Mount also as a Jewish pilgrim. And that was quite an astonishing discovery for sure. And also the wood came from the territory of Lebanon and Cyprus. And we know that the original temple was built with the wood coming from Tyre, which is the territory of modern day Lebanon. Well, cypress trees, right? So it was, I mean, it was cypress trees, and they came from Lebanon. A lot of, well, almost all these beams are now in the storage. The ones that it was decided to substitute with the newer ones, and most of them are still in the storage, but several are on display in a museum. And this summer, as I was staying in Israel, I was lucky enough to have visited this museum, and I have filmed those wooden bulbs, which are gorgeous. You see, they're ornate. You don't see them actually, right? I mean, you don't see them because they are not. They were just used as a construction element, just providing the necessary support and everything, for the roof. That was just it. But they were so ornate, so they were meant to have been seen at some point, and they date well to the first century BCE. That's quite an interesting discovery, right? So definitely they were designed to have been shown somehow. So this summer, I visited the Rockefeller Museum, which is the museum in Jerusalem. It was closed, and it's still actually closed. But the guided tours, prearranged, are still possible. Rumors have it that the museum, they might close the museum and open a hotel there instead of the museum, which is going to be a catastrophe, because Rockefeller Museum has absolutely amazing archaeology. Why it's called Rockefeller? Because John Rockefeller donated like $20 million or so, or something like that, uh, just for the establishment of archaeological museum, and that's what the courtyard looks like. This is my photo. This is me, just as a proof that I was in Rockefeller Museum. And I mean, it's so stupid that I never really had a chance to visit it while I lived in Israel. A museum was fully functioning, it was open, and then it closed when the war started. And I just hope they will reopen, but it doesn't look good. So, but anyway, and I filmed the Rockefeller Museum for you, which means I will be taking you on the pre-recorded tour of the Rockefeller Museum. There is so much archaeology there. It's going to be super challenging for me to put everything together, but I'm determined. And so you can see there is like all these wooden beams. Again, not all of them date to the Second Temple period, right? Not all of them date to the first century BCE. But these are all these wooden beams are from the roof of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. As you may have noticed, there are some inscriptions in Greek, which I believe is also quite important, because this is clearly a secondary use. Muslims would not be writing anything in Greek to place in the mosques, and but we know that during the Byzantine time they did. So again, this is another proof to the existence of a church a Byzantine church prior to the building of the mosques and the Muslim shrines. That's quite amazing, actually. Again, it's just a fraction of what what you can find in this. I mean, you cannot find it in the storage. Nobody can. So, but it was, I would say, enough to uh, fascinate us. I was there on the guided tour. One of my teachers, David Gurevich, an archaeologist, a PhD, and a licensed tour guide, and one of my teachers. So he gave a tour. So I knew I would get the best information. So everything that I have just shared with you, I also heard on his tour. So thanks so much, David, for this. And let's move on. So this is kind of a food for thought for you. Again, we don't have an opportunity for any archaeological digging, but at least there is something, and the data is quite interesting. It raises a lot more questions and answers, but at least it gives you a lot of food for thought. Now let's have a look at this golden dome. This is the Dome of the Rock, and uh, it's definitely golden. It's beautiful, it's glorious, and it's just an amazing place to be, regardless of what you believe in, honestly. And all these arts constructions, actually, you can find them from all the sides of the Temple Mount. They are, well, part of this, complex. It was built in, well, around 7th century, and they were just meant to ornate, to decorate, adorn the territory of the Temple Mount and the Dome of the Rock. So the Dome of the Rock, it is a place of Muslim worship, but it doesn't really look like a mosque at all. And also next to it, there is also an interesting construction, which we will talk about most probably next time, because I would like to focus on the highlight, and the highlight is clearly the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock is adorned with the tiles, and these tiles, well, we actually call them Armenian tiles, but you can't find these. Well, I definitely need a much more detailed talk about the Armenian tiles, but in general, I would just like to say that in Armenia, you will not find tiles like that. We together traveled to Armenia with you last year. We have done a tour of Yerevan, and we haven't seen a single tile like that, because these art originated in Armenian communities that lived on the territory of later on became the Ottoman Empire. You know, the tough history between Armenians and the Ottomans. So I'm not even going into this, but yes, and then Muslims also, well, use these tiles in their architecture in great numbers and in beautiful ways. I mean, just by looking at this building, I don't know, I could stay there forever, honestly. There was a shade, it was not yet, uh, I would say it wasn't yet hot. I mean, in about 1 hour after that, it was already hot, but sitting there, in the dome of the chain, that was quite lovely. So I'm using this footage, the drone footage. You can find them in great numbers. That's what it looks from above. And yeah, we don't have archaeology. I mean, yeah, we don't have archaeology, but we have still a lot of information. And thanks to this information obtained over the course of mostly, I would say, the about past 150 years or so, basically, we have a lot of, visual aids, different diagrams and sketches of what actually there is. Just to remind you the chronology here, right? So Dome of the Rock, Kubat al-Sakhra. It was built in the end of the 7th century, as I said, so during the Umayyad period. So the Umayyad period, this is the Umayyad dynasty. Uh, it has some of the most magnificent architecture. Some Umayyad palaces are just absolutely astonishing and jaw-dropping. So the Umayyad palaces, the base of the Umayyad palaces also were discovered by the Temple Mount, and by the southern wall of the Temple Mount. So just giving you kind of the timeline to understand, where we are now. So why is there the Dome of the Rock? And I'm providing this information for you. I want you to see it in writing. I guess it's just easier to follow. So according to Islamic tradition, And this is important. So I'm not referring to Quran per se. I'm referring to the Islamic tradition, to biographic literature, so to speak, of Muhammad. There was a lot of written about the life of Muhammad, and in several books. It was written, like Hadith, for example, and Sirah. It was written so. Was described this night journey that Muhammad took. So the Prophet Muhammad was transported from Mecca to Jerusalem, to a distant mosque, Al-Isra, a distant mosque. And there he traveled on his winged horse, Barak, and there on the mount, he ascended to heaven. And there he was given, a command from God, including, one of those commands was actually praying 5 times a day. As you know, Muslims pray 5 times a day. And since then, it's been considered, the Dome of the Rock and the Temple Mount in general was considered one of the holiest sites in Islam. Kind of the third holiest site after Mecca and Medina. That's the tradition. What is written in Quran is that yes, there was a night journey to a distant mosque. Which exactly mosque? It was not said. Just a distant mosque. And after these biographical literature was published, it was interpreted as the Dome of the Rock and in Jerusalem. That's how we get it. So this is the tradition. So, and ever since the end of the 7th century, we have this gorgeous Dome of the Rock, which not always looked as gorgeous as it looks nowadays, but it from the very beginning looked quite lovely. Obviously, they were built also temporary constructions, and because it took time for everything to be built in stone. And there are tons of photographs, obviously, by Muslim pilgrims, by all the pilgrims, and because of the influx of pilgrimage in the second half of the 19th century, which you know very well from my multiple tours, there are a lot of photographs, which are also important for archaeologists and for researchers, because that's what we have. That's all we have. For example, this photo was taken, it was a black and white. It was taken inside the Dome of the Rock, and it was colorized later on. It's an old photograph. This is just some mosaic work. It's just incredible, honestly. It's just absolutely incredible. And it's exactly this colorful. The colors are exactly this vibrant. And since I'm not Muslim, I'm not allowed to visit. I'm not allowed to go inside in the Dome of the Rock. And as you can see, this is it doesn't really look like a mosque, fully fledged mosque. It looks more like a shrine. A shrine to what? To the foundation stone. Okay, let me go back a little bit. I'm not sure how far. Yeah. So what is this foundation stone? Okay, the foundation stone in Judaism. Since Judaism is the oldest religion, and Islam incorporates a lot of elements from Judaism and also Christianity, being the youngest of the 3 Abrahamic religions. So we are referring to the oldest, to the source. So in Judaism, this foundation stone is called Aven Hashtiyah. So this is kind of the rock above which the Dome of the Rock is standing. So this is it was holiest place in Judaism, and it just has the absolutely incomprehensible importance on multiple levels. Well, the Jews believe that that stone was the spot where the earth was like created, like the center of creation, uh, the navel of the earth, basically. And also, we know that on Mount Moriah, on the stone, on the bedrock, the binding of Isaac took place. Right, this is where Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac over there, and exactly above that spot. Later on, Solomon would build the temple, and it is believed that exactly on top of that stone where the binding was supposed to happen, the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy of Holies would be placed with the Ark of the Covenant. Well, that this is the stone. This is the bedrock. There you go. So the dome of the rock, actually, that's exactly what it means. It is the dome above the rock. So it's more like a shrine to the rock rather than a well, of course it has elements of a mosque, but not it's not like a fully fledged mosque, so to speak. But it's a place of a Muslim worship. Yes. So, well, since it was the site of the first temple, it also was the site of the second temples. In the sea, you see second temples. I put here second temples because there were like two temples. So sometimes you may be challenged. Oh my God, okay. I don't think you would be challenged, but in general, sometimes they ask you, how many temples have there been? And you kind of have to, if you want to, show how clever you are, you can say, actually, there were two, but they were two second temples. And, well, they would be surprised. So, the Holy of Holies, right? The Kodesh HaKodashim. So, with the Ark of the Covenant and everything. So, it is believed to have been standing exactly on that very stone. And since no archaeology is available and, well, you cannot really touch the stone, it's kind of all guarded, right? I mean, you can't really approach the stone now, but there are photographs. There are a lot of photographs taken in different periods. That's well, and you can see a lot just by looking at the stone. One thing that I would like to mention is that there has been a lot of narrative, coming from the Muslim side, claiming that there had never been a temple and there is no archaeology, there is no any, I would say any trace of it. Well, and this is, I would say, like scientific reports. However, we always refer to this book. It's kind of a guide of the Temple Mount, so Al-Haram Sharif, that's the Temple Mount. That was published in Jerusalem in 1924 under the supervision of the Mufti of Jerusalem, Supreme Muslim Council. You see, published by Supreme Muslim Council, right? That's quite important. And this is just one paragraph from it. The two principal edifices are the Dome of the Rock on a raised platform in the middle and the Mosque of Al-Aqsa against the south wall. Other buildings, which we shall consider later, lie dotted about here and there. So there again, there are a lot of things that are dotted left and right. So, and look, just read further on. The site is one of the oldest in the world. Its sanctity dates from the earliest, perhaps from prehistoric times. Its identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. This too is the spot, according to the universal belief, on which David built there an altar unto the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. So they're quoting actually Torah here. And they're right. I mean, that's just exactly how it has always been perceived. And then now with all this, current narrative, reading reports, scientific reports published in, scientific journals, reading all that kind of seems really, 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 really weird and odd and ridiculous. I'm very sorry. But let's go back. we need archaeology. We need core archaeology here, right? That's all we have. That's the only weapon we have. Let's go on. We still can talk a little bit more. I know I owe you also a Q&A session. So look at this photograph. So this is well, this was this. I think this photograph is even available on Wikipedia, and there are many of them. You can find a lot of them. And there are a lot of different indentations there. Some look more regular, some look just like natural, weathering and everything, erosion of some sort. So there was some, I would say this, for example, this side looks like very natural erosion and just some changes that occurred with time. It's just bedrock, so it has always been here, right? Always. Well, it's just a beautiful ceiling. Also, just the photos I found online. So, and also, I think even on Wikipedia, you can find this blueprint of how the Dome of the Rock actually looks. So, again, this is kind of a well, you can find this online. So I thought it would be a good idea. I'm just sharing with you the screenshot. So what you see here is kind of the how the Dome of the Rock looks if you just cut it and look at it from a distance. So you see there is the rock, and as I said, there are a lot of like just traces of just natural erosion, and also something that looks regular, like there had been something standing there, and also the upper section is kind of really flattened. It has different indentations, but it kind of looks flatter, like artificially flattened. Okay, it's one thing. There are reports that during some repair works, that was discovered that well, just let's have a look at these indentations, right? And also these indentations are described by Lynn Rittmeyer. His like books by Lynn Rittmeyer are also like I would say Bible of the archaeology and the tour guide because he is a top class level archaeologist. I think now he's living in Wales and does the research work there. He lived many years in Israel, and I believe he was hired somewhere else. I've never met him in person, but I've read a lot of his reports, and we've been told a lot about him. This is Rittmeyer just doing some excavations, and he is the one who did a lot of descriptions and analyzed a lot of data. Again, no archaeology, but a lot of things. And he also described a lot of discoveries that were made in the excavation around the Temple Mount, especially the southern and the western wall and the corners of it. So you can see those indentations. You can see some of them look regular, some of them look natural, some of them look too angular, too regular. Well, some claim, for example, that you can see several angled, rectangular indentations, and it is believed by Lynn Rittmeyer, he is not the only one who thinks so, but that, where it's written Ark, it is believed that exactly in that indentation, the Ark of the Covenant was placed. It's just an assumption, and that's all we have. And it's not much of the archaeology here, but there is a lot more to talk about that we're going to probably discuss next time. And so it's important to remember that Solomon did not build a temple. And that David did not build a temple, right? It was Solomon who built the temple. David he sinned too much and he shed too much blood. So he was a warrior, and he was not decent enough, and he did not deserve to be given such an important task. So it was Solomon who built it, but David kept the Ark of the Covenant, right? And he placed it in, as we believe, where he lived, where he had his palace. and he had his palace in the city of David. So that's why prior to taking you to the Temple Mount and the old city, I took you to the oldest part of Jerusalem, which is the city of David. So, and there was also some archaeology there in connection with the Ark of the Covenant. But nevertheless, let's put it on hold here. There is some interesting information with regards to what is actually there underneath these stones. And there is something, again, there is some data, there are some photographs that I will provide next time. And since I don't want to overrun and I still owe you some time for the Q&A, let's just put it on hold here. I hope you're okay with that. So let me turn the chat on. Let me know if you have any questions, and it's okay if it's difficult to follow. And it is difficult to follow anyway. It is. And to those who joined us a little later after we started, also welcome on board. Thank you so much for joining. This has been recorded, and I will be sharing the recording so you can watch it at your own convenience, at your own pace. You can look up for all the information and photographs. Everything is taken from the open sources. I wish there was just more interest and a more, I would say, accurate way of wording the information. That's just what I really wish. Okay. So in the meantime, let me share with you the links once again. Those who joined a little later, I'm not sure if you have access to the links. So the third episode is already scheduled. Next time it's gonna be the same time on Sunday, November 23. The third episode is already there, and the first tour recording you can still find on my YouTube channel. It's all there. And let me share with you the links. Well, most of you know them very well, but I'm gonna just do it once again. My website has a lot more links there and a lot more tours. I have already shared the tour recordings as of yesterday, and they're all on my website. You can find them easily, as well as several more tours for November. Also, you have the link to my YouTube channel, and as you know, I would always appreciate your support. PayPal, buying me a coffee, and in case you missed the live stream I did together with Tanya earlier today, this recording is also available. We had to play it by ear as the food market was already closing with very few vendors remained. We decided to just completely flip the script, and we did a different tour, which was also fun. You probably told us and you've forgotten, but why do Muslims have the dome and so much territory? Why they have so much territory? Do you mean the dome of the rock of the Temple Mount? So the Temple Mount, well, it was the Muslim shrines have been there since 7th century. Obviously the Muslims have not been there continuously since the 7th century. There was also a Crusader period. I will be talking about the changes. I will be talking about the Crusader period, obviously, and there were a lot of changes throughout. Well, over the course of the several centuries. I don't really have the answer to a question why they have such a territory, though. I don't know. That was their territory. That's basically it. And the way the division. If you're referring to the other territory, you mean the Muslim quarter. Well, that's the division that is a status quo of the Ottoman period, and then it was also protected during the Mandate period, and Israel just took it, and it was part of the United Nations, the League of Nations agreement, and the United Nations plan, according to which, by the way, the state of Israel was established and the region of the territory was allocated, to this and that state. So that's just historically how it was, and Israel accepted it. That's it. And historically, when the League of Nations in the 1920s and later on the United Nations, originally, well, there were several partition plans provided uh, over the course of the, well, just about this 30 years, before the 1948, when Israel declared independence and everything. So, according to those plans, uh, Israel actually was given a much smaller territory or a bigger territory, but with a less fertile land, like with the biggest part of it actually in the desert, like Judean desert and down south. Well, that's just, how it was, just like that. You said something about the southern and western walls next to each other. Please explain. I said about the corner of the western wall and the southern wall. The territory is the archaeological park called Davidson Center. And we did a lot of tours there. You can find the archaeology dating to different periods. And as you know, it's like phyllo pastry. So they're just, so many layers. And if you want to dig, let's say, to the Byzantine period, it means you have to tear down the Umayyad period. If you want to dig to the first temple period, you need to eliminate the second temple period. You always have to sacrifice something. So it was decided that they would keep the archaeology of different times and in different sites. So that's why you can actually kind of walk back in time. So let's say the Western Wall Plaza, let's do the following. Well, that's okay. Let's do that like this. Let me open again the map. Hold on a second. No, it's not that tour. That's a different tour. Hold on. I just think it's gonna be easier if I show you everything, the plan. Yeah, so you see it now. You see what's written the Wailing Wall, right? And then you see the section that is kind of in red. And you see I don't have the pointer. This is ridiculous. So it's so difficult to explain. You see the corner of the Temple Mount, so the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and below it is territory in red. So exactly starting from there, but outside of the walls, there is archaeology. Starting from the destruction of the temple, you can say destruction of the stones that they were falling in the year 70 AD when the temple was burning. The stones would be falling down and cracking the wall, cracking the floor of the first century BCE, the one that Jesus walked himself. And you could find those stones there. And then the further you go down to the corner of the western and the southern wall, and then you go backwards in time and then again and again. So it's just a different archaeology, different levels. I was wondering if excavations digging as such are out of question. Wouldn't it be possible to use some state-of-the-art non-invasive methods? That's a well, okay. And nobody outside of the Muslim world are allowed in, and well, the Muslim world is not interested in this. Let's put it like this, okay? Well, I don't want to generalize, but you kind of have an idea. There have been done a lot of different non-invasive researches done outside of the Temple Mount, obviously in the Western Wall tunnels and everything. But you can't really scan through such thick stones as well. And it's quite complex. But yes, some analysis have been carried out. Yes, this is true, but this is just not enough. It's not that. How on earth do you remember all this info? I don't know. But it's important to understand that before every tour, I actually have to hit the books. Every time I have to hit the books, and we still do that. Had I been living in St. Petersburg, I would have been, hitting the books about the Romanovs still before every tour. That's just how it goes. You don't look Muslim, you can't pretend and sneak in. Sometimes even the Israel chutzpah is not enough. Yes, you are very right. Yes, all these things are so heavily guarded. You cannot do that. You cannot. No. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, I hope this has been clear. Uh, chutzpah. Yeah, yeah, chutzpah. We know. We know. The how do you, what is the best way to translate the chutzpah? It's like the creative approach, the, I don't know, the, what do you call it? The ingenuity? And I don't know. It's like the serendipity. I don't know how to translate it. So the chutzpah is um, like a clever tricks. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how to translate it into English. It's just like something that it's one of those words you can't really translate properly. It's like, no, like doing things in Spanish like dafka. No? No, chutzpah is something different. But dafka, yes, dafka you do just because it's in spite of everything. But chutzpah is kind of something else. Resourcefulness, yeah, this could also, yeah, this could be, yeah, why not? Resourcefulness, this is also true. Yeah. Sometimes when they say chutzpah, they mean like you are cunning or sly, but it's not exactly the exact. No, it's not. So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much everyone for joining. Dolly, let me just text me and we will discuss the best words for it. No, but but chutzpah is also used in both positive and negative connotation, isn't it? That's what I was told, and that's what I hear all the time. So maybe originally it was a negative connotation, but now it's kind of different. So resourcefulness is maybe it's a bit too positive. You're right. So I'm not 100% happy with the word. So maybe I just need to look it up or ask ChatGPT. Ah, thank you so much, Dolores. I'm glad you enjoyed the tour. You was in Jerusalem in 2013. Was so interested in the excavations going on then. I hope Rockefeller does open again. I do hope so. I do hope that the Rockefeller will reopen. In 2013, Dolores. So you may be referring to the Sifton project. So actually, there is some archaeology we will be talking about. I spoke about the Sifton project. To have the nerve, maybe, yeah. Having the nerve is a better translation. You're right. Having the nerve, yeah, maybe that feels better. That fits. Okay, thank you. I like it. A couple of you actually have come up with this version. So yeah, Cindy, and yeah, I think you're right. Exactly, Cindy. Yeah, I think this is the best so far. When you have the nerve to do something, yeah, when you dare, no matter what. So maybe this is the parts, Dolly, you were referring to. Like I wasn't going to doubt your knowledge of Hebrew because it's your mother tongue, obviously. Having the nerve to get on somebody's nerve, yeah, absolutely. This is a very, very Jewish thing. Very. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you everyone for your input, be it a linguistic input, be it just your questions. Thank you so much. Thank you also for your support and for cheering me up, keeping me company and everything and your understanding when we had to redesign our tour the last minute, maybe even the last second with Tanya. Thank you for everything, and I will see you next weekend. Thanks so much. Mark, thank you so much for the coffee as well. And hold on a second. And Dolores, thank you so much. Bye bye, everyone. I like it. I like this linguistic dispute. That's lovely. Bye bye.